The crystal cities of Zelrose floated gently in the morning sky, their transparent walls catching the soft light of twin suns. Elder Vex stood on the highest platform of the central spire, watching his people go about their peaceful lives. Children played in the floating gardens while their parents tended to the singing plants that provided food and medicine. The air smelled of flowers and carried the gentle hum of contentment that had filled this world for thousands of years. The Zelani had never known war. Their ancestors had evolved from gentle creatures that ate only plants and lived in harmony with their low-gravity world. They had no predators, no natural enemies, and no concept of violence beyond the occasional disagreement that was settled through meditation and discussion. Their greatest achievement was not weapons or armies, but art and philosophy that could move hearts across the galaxy. Elder Vex was reviewing the morning reports from various floating cities when the first alarm sounded. It was a soft chime, nothing harsh or frightening, because the Zelani had never needed such things. The sound meant that unusual energy readings had been detected in the outer system. Vex touched the communication crystal with one of his 4 delicate fingers. "What seems to be the matter?" he asked in the musical language of his people. "Elder, we are detecting massive ships approaching our world. They are not responding to our greetings," came the worried voice of Keeper Zell from the orbital monitoring station. Vex felt a strange sensation in his chest that his people had no word for. Fear was not something the Zelani experienced often.
"How many ships?"
"Over 300 vessels, Elder. They are larger than anything in our records. 300 ships." The entire Zelani space fleet consisted of 12 peaceful exploration vessels and a few dozen transport craft. They had no weapons, no shields designed for battle, and no experience with anything more dangerous than asteroid storms. "Send them our standard greeting," Vex ordered, though something deep in his mind whispered that this would not be enough. "Offer them food, shelter, and knowledge. Ask what they need." The response came 30 minutes later. Instead of words, it came as fire and death. The first energy beams struck the outer monitoring stations, turning them into expanding clouds of glowing gas in seconds. The Zelani who were working there had just enough time to scream before they died. More beams lanced down toward the planet, striking the floating cities with precision that spoke of long experience in destroying things. The city of Morning Song, home to 50,000 Zelani, simply vanished. One moment it was there, its crystal spires reflecting sunlight in beautiful patterns. The next moment, there was only empty air and falling debris that glowed with residual heat. Elder Vex stared in shock as his peaceful world transformed into something from the darkest nightmares that his people sometimes experienced but never understood. The crystal communication array crackled to life with panicked voices from across the planet. "The northern clusters are under attack. They destroyed the art preserve. My children. Where are my children?" Vex forced himself to focus, despite the horror unfolding around him. His people needed him to think, to act, to somehow find a solution to something they had never imagined could exist. He activated the planetary communication system and spoke to every Zelani still alive. "My people, we face something our ancestors never prepared us for. These beings, whoever they are, seem intent on causing us harm. Move to the deepest parts of your cities. Activate all protective barriers. We'll find a way through this." But even as he spoke, Vex knew there was no way through this. The barriers were designed to keep out storms and radiation, not military-grade energy weapons. His people were like flower petals trying to stop a hurricane. The enemy ships landed in the ruins of destroyed cities and began deploying ground forces. Through the few remaining observation crystals, Vex watched creatures unlike anything in the galactic databases. They stood on 2 legs like many species, but they were covered in heavy armor that made them look like walking fortresses.
They
moved with mechanical precision, destroying everything in their path without pause or mercy. One of the creatures stopped in front of a group of Zelani children who had been separated from their parents. The children, too young to understand death, approached the armored figure with their natural curiosity. The creature raised its weapon and fired without hesitation. That was when Elder Vex truly understood what his people faced. These were not explorers or traders or even typical conquerors who might accept surrender. These beings killed for the sake of killing, destroyed for the pleasure of destruction. The Zilani had encountered pure evil, and they had no weapons against it. Within 6 hours, half the floating cities were gone. The planet's surface was scarred with impact craters where once beautiful structures had crashed down. The air itself seemed to weep with the smoke of burning crystal and the cries of the dying Vex. Made his way to the central spire's deepest communication chamber. If his people were going to die, he would not let them die in silence. The galaxy would know what happened here. Perhaps some other peaceful species would learn from their fate and prepare better defenses. He activated the most powerful transmitter his people possessed, one designed to send messages across the galaxy. His hands shook as he composed what he knew would be his final message to the universe. This is Elder Vex of the Zilani people on the world of Zelrose in the Outer Spiral. We are under attack by unknown forces. They came without warning and showed no interest in communication. Our cities are burning. Our children are dying. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to fight beings who seem to live for destruction alone. Paused, listening to the sound of energy weapons firing somewhere above. Another city had just died. To any species receiving this transmission, we offer everything we have in exchange for help. Our libraries contain 10,000 years of art, music, and philosophy. Our scientists have unlocked the secrets of crystal growth and energy harmony. Our farmers can teach you to grow food that sings with life. We offer all of this freely to anyone who will come to our aid. The building shook as something exploded. Nearby, dust fell from the crystal ceiling, and the lights flickered. We are not warriors. We have never harmed another living being. We know nothing of violence or hatred or the desire to conquer. Perhaps that is why we are dying. Perhaps the universe has no place for those who choose peace over power. Another explosion, closer this time. Vex could hear the heavy footsteps of the enemy soldiers in the halls above. Hey, if you are listening to this message, remember the Zilani. Remember that we tried to live with love instead of fear. Remember that we created beauty instead of weapons. And if you have the power to help others as we needed help, please do not make the choice that we fear the universe is making today. The transmission chamber door exploded inward. 3 armored figures stepped through the smoke and debris, their weapons already raised. Elder Vex looked at them without hatred, because his people had never learned that emotion. Please, he said in standard Galactic, hoping they would understand. The children. Let the children live. The soldiers opened fire. The message continued to broadcast across subspace, even after Elder Vex died. It reached the cold databases of the Nexari, who calculated the odds of profit versus loss and decided that helping would be economically inefficient. It reached the honor-bound Talaxians, who deemed the Zilani too weak to deserve warriors' aid. It reached dozens of advanced civilizations who all found reasons to turn away from the dying cries of a peaceful people. But the message also traveled to a small blue world on the galaxy's edge, where it was picked up by Commander Jake Sullivan. During his routine monitoring shift at the Deep Space Communications Array, Jake had been tracking signals from across the galaxy for 12 years. But he had never heard anything like this. As he listened to Elder Vex's final words, something stirred in Jake's chest that the Zilani would have recognized, even though they had no word for it. It was the fury of the Protector, the rage of someone who refuses to let evil triumph while they still draw breath. Jake reached for his communication controls and began composing an urgent message to Earth Defense Command. The Deathworlders had heard the call. Commander Jake Sullivan stared at his monitor screen for a full minute after the transmission ended. In 12 years of deep space communications work, he had intercepted thousands of signals from across the galaxy. Most were routine trade communications, or scientific data exchanges. Some were diplomatic messages between alien governments. A few were distress calls from ships with mechanical problems. He had never heard anything like Elder Vex's final message. Jake played the recording again, listening to the musical voice of the aliens speaking in broken standard Galactic as explosions echoed in the background. The fear in that voice was something any human could understand, even across the vast differences between species. It was the fear of a parent watching their children die. Jake's hands moved across his control panel with practiced speed. He opened a priority channel to Earth Defense Command and began uploading the complete transmission, along with his analysis of the signal's origin point. His message was simple and direct. Priority Alpha transmission received from Outer Spiral. Sector: alien civilization under attack and requesting aid. Species appears to be peaceful non-combatants facing complete extinction. Signal originates from Zelro's system, approximately 47 light-years from Earth. Recommend immediate command review. Within 30 minutes, Jake's communication board lit up with incoming calls from every major Earth defense installation. Admiral Lisa Chen's face appeared on his main screen, her expression serious but calm. Jake had seen that look before, during the asteroid crisis of 2387 and the first contact protocols 3 years ago. Was the look of someone preparing to make decisions that would affect millions of lives. Commander Sullivan, I need you to run a complete analysis on this transmission. Voice patterns, background sounds, energy signatures, everything. I want to know if this is legitimate or some kind of deception. Jake nodded and began pulling up his analysis programs. Admiral, I've been monitoring alien communications for over a decade. This signal shows every indication of being genuine. The fear in the speaker's voice matches human psychological patterns for extreme distress. The background explosions are consistent with energy weapons fire. The transmission cuts off abruptly, suggesting the sender was killed or the equipment was destroyed. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, studying something off-screen. Jake, I need you to understand something. If this is real, if we decide to respond, we'll be committing Earth to its first military action in alien space.
Are you certain about your analysis?
Jake thought about Elder Vex's final words, about children dying while their parents could do nothing to save them. He thought about peaceful cities being destroyed by creatures who killed for pleasure. Admiral, I'm certain. These people need help, and from what I can tell, no one else in the galaxy is willing to provide it. 2 hours later, Admiral Chen stood before the Earth Defense Command Council in the secure briefing room beneath New Geneva. The room held 20 of the most powerful people on Earth, including President Martinez, General Thompson from the Space Marines, and Dr. Sarah Kim from the Xenobiology Institute. Admiral Chen activated the holographic display and played Elder Vex's transmission in its entirety. The room fell silent as the musical alien voice filled the air, describing the destruction of his world and pleading for anyone, to help his dying people. When the recording ended, President Martinez was the first to speak.
How far away?
Is this Zelro's system? 47 light-years, sir. Our fastest ships. We could reach it in approximately 6 days using maximum warp drive. General Thompson leaned forward. What do we know about the attacking force? Dr. Kim pulled up her analysis on the secondary display. Based on the transmission in our database of known alien species, we believe the attackers are the Krex Empire. They're a militaristic species that has conquered over 40 worlds in the past decade. Their technology is superior to ours in most areas, particularly in energy weapons and armor systems. How superior? Asked President Martinez. Their ships are approximately 30% larger than our equivalent vessels and carry weapons with twice the effective range of our main batteries. Their ground forces use powered armor that can withstand most of our conventional weapons. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. General Thompson raised his hand for silence. Dr. Kim, are you suggesting that we cannot win a direct confrontation with this Krex Empire? Dr. Kim hesitated. In a conventional battle using accepted galactic military doctrine, our chances would be poor. However, we have certain advantages that no other species in the galaxy possesses, such as Admiral Chen stood and activated a new display showing Earth's military history. General, every other known species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that were relatively safe. They had few natural predators, stable climates, and abundant resources. Their military thinking is based on overwhelming technological superiority and formal battle tactics. She changed the display to show images of Earth's history. Ancient battlefields, medieval sieges, modern guerrilla warfare, urban combat zones. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to fight when we were outgunned, outnumbered, and facing superior technology. We invented concepts like asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and adaptive tactics. Captain Ben Rodriguez from the Navy spoke up from his seat near the back. "Admiral, are you suggesting we can defeat a superior alien force using guerrilla tactics? I'm suggesting that we're the only species in the galaxy that knows how to fight dirty when we have to. The Kreks expect their enemies to either surrender immediately or meet them in formal battle. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to play by their rules." President Martinez stood and walked to the large window overlooking the city. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. We're talking about taking our entire available fleet, traveling 47 light-years into unknown space, and attacking a technologically superior alien empire that has conquered dozens of worlds?" "Yes, sir. And our plan is to use unconventional tactics against an enemy that has never encountered such methods." "That's correct, Mr. President." The president was quiet for a long moment. "What does our intelligence tell us about the Zilani people? Are they worth this risk?" Dr. Kim activated a new display showing what little information they had gathered from various galactic databases. The Zilani are described as a peaceful species with advanced knowledge in several scientific fields. They've never engaged in warfare and are considered to be among the most artistic and philosophical peoples in the galaxy. They pose no threat to anyone. So we're talking about risking human lives to save a species we've never met, who can't offer us any military assistance, against an enemy that could potentially threaten Earth if we anger them. Admiral Chen stepped forward. "Mr. President, with respect, that's exactly what we're talking about." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the weight of the decision before them. This would be humanity's first major action on the Galactic stage, and it would define how other species saw them for generations to come. General Thompson broke the silence. "How many ships can we deploy?" 12 vessels, including the flagship Valkyrie. "We can carry approximately 8,000 personnel, including Marines, Navy crew, and support staff. Against how many Krek ships?" "Intelligence estimates over 300 vessels in their attack fleet." The odds were staggering. 12 human ships against 300 alien warships. 8,000 humans against what could be millions of Krek soldiers. By any rational calculation, it was suicide. President Martinez turned back to face the council. "Let me ask you all something. When my grandfather was fighting in the South American conflicts, his unit was outnumbered 10-1 by better equipped forces. Do you know what he told me about that experience?" The room waited. "He said that being outnumbered just meant the enemy had more targets to choose from. But it also meant we had more enemies to surprise. He said the biggest advantage any soldier could have was fighting for something that mattered more than his own life." The president looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "Those alien children dying on Zelros matter more than our political concerns. They matter more than our technological disadvantages. They matter more than the risks to our own people." He paused and took a deep breath. "Admiral Chen, you have authorization to deploy the fleet, bring our people home alive, but more importantly, save as many of those aliens as you can." Chen saluted. "Yes, sir. We'll bring them home." As the council members filed out of the room, Captain Rodriguez approached Admiral Chen. "Ma'am, do you really think we can win this?" Admiral Chen looked at the star charts showing the route to Zelros. "Captain, the Kreks have been winning battles for decades by using overwhelming force against civilized opponents who fight fair. They've never faced humans before." She turned to face him with a smile that would have made her ancestors proud. "They're about to learn why Earth is classified as a death world. The human fleet dropped out of warp drive at the edge of the Zelros system 6 days after leaving Earth." Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, watching his tactical displays fill with information that made his stomach sink. The Krek's fleet was even larger than intelligence had estimated. Over 400 alien warships surrounded the dying world of Zelros like vultures around a carcass. Lieutenant Steve Martinez, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his console with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures. From the planet's surface, Kreks are using bombardment weapons to destroy what's left of the floating cities." Rodriguez activated his communication system to address the entire human fleet. "All ships. This is Valkyrie Actual. We are now in enemy territory facing a force that outnumbers us 35 to 1. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and watch each other's backs. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people need help." Admiral Lisa Chen's voice crackled over the intercom from her flagship, the UES Liberty. "Fleet commanders, initiate combat approach Delta 7. Small unit tactics, hit and run, make them chase us. Do not engage in direct fleet combat under any circumstances." The human ships spread out in a pattern that would have looked chaotic to any observer familiar with standard galactic military doctrine. Instead of forming neat battle lines or defensive formations, they scattered like leaves in the wind, each ship taking a different approach vector toward the planet, on Zelros itself. The few remaining Zilani huddled in the deepest parts of their last intact city. Elder Kess, who had taken leadership after Vex's death, watched the orbital displays with growing despair. The Krek ships had been bombarding their world for 7 days now, and less than 10% of his people remained alive. Young Zilani technician named Rix approached with trembling hands. "Elder, we're detecting new energy signatures. More ships have arrived in the system." Elder Kess felt his heart sink even further. More Kreks reinforcements. "No, Elder, these ships are different, smaller. They're broadcasting a message on emergency frequencies." The main display activated, showing the bridge of an alien vessel. The creature that appeared was unlike anything in the Zilani databases. It stood upright on 2 legs like many species, but its skin was dark, and its features were sharp rather than the soft curves most civilized species possessed. When it spoke, its voice carried strange undertones that made Kess think of predators and storm winds. "This is Admiral Lisa Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call and have come to provide assistance. Please respond if any Zilani leadership survives." Elder Kess stared at the display in shock. The creature had said Earth, which their computers identified as a world on the galactic rim that was classified as a death world. No civilized species lived on death worlds. The environmental conditions were too harsh, too dangerous, too filled with things that could kill. Admiral Chencast managed to say through the translator, "I am Elder Kess of the Zilani. We... We did not expect anyone to answer our call, certainly not beings from the Forbidden Worlds." The human's expression changed in a way that Kess couldn't interpret. "Elder, there are no Forbidden Worlds when people need help. How many of your people are still alive?" "Perhaps 50,000, scattered in the deep shelters of our last city. The Kreks have been destroying everything for 7 days. We do not understand why they continue to kill us. We offered to surrender, but they ignored us." Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice carried something that made Elder Kess's skin tingle with recognition. It was the sound a storm makes just before it breaks. "Elder Kess, the Kreks kill because they enjoy killing. But they made one mistake when they chose to attack your world." "What mistake?" "Date it where humans could hear you scream." "The first. Krek's ship died before its crew understood what was happening. Captain Rodriguez's vessel, the Valkyrie, came out of nowhere at maximum speed, fired a full spread of missiles into the alien ship's engine section, and vanished back into the void. Before the Kreks could respond, the explosion lit up the darkness like a new star. On the Krek's command ship, War Leader Thok stared at his tactical displays in confusion. What was that vessel? Does not match any known species in our databases. His tactical officer, Subcommander Vex, studied the sensor readings. War Leader, the attacking ship, appears to be of primitive construction. Its weapons are projectile-based, rather than energy weapons. But its speed and maneuverability are far beyond expected parameters for such technology. Primitive weapons? Thok laughed, a sound like grinding metal. What species still uses projectiles in space combat? The answer came in the form of 3 more human ships appearing from different directions, each one firing streams of projectiles that punched through Krek's shields like they were made of paper. The projectiles weren't just simple bullets. They were smart munitions that could change course, guided missiles that thought for themselves, and kinetic weapons that hit with the force of meteors. Lieutenant Martinez watched his displays with growing excitement as the human weapons found their marks. Captain, their shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They're not configured to handle physical projectiles moving at these velocities. That's because every other species in the galaxy moved past kinetic weapons thousands of years ago, Rodriguez replied. They forgot that sometimes the old ways work best. The Krek's fleet began to turn toward the human ships, their massive vessels, moving with the slow dignity of mountains, changing direction. Their formation was perfect, their spacing exact, their approach calculated according to military principles that had worked for centuries. Captain Susan Blake, commanding the destroyer U.S. Hornet, watched the Krek's formation with professional interest. She had studied their tactics during the flight from Earth, analyzing every battle record the humans had been able to obtain. Helm, prepare for evasive pattern Charlie Neen, she ordered. Ma'am, that pattern is designed for atmospheric flight. We're in space. Blake smiled. Exactly. They won't expect it because it shouldn't work here. But we're not flying by their rules. The Hornet suddenly dove toward the planet's surface, using the gravity well to accelerate beyond anything the Kreks thought possible. The alien ships tried to follow, but their perfect formations broke apart as they attempted to match human maneuvers that defied conventional space combat logic. On the surface of Zelros, Elder Kess watched the battle unfold on his orbital displays. The human ships moved like living things, dancing between the larger Kreks vessels with impossible grace. They appeared to be fighting a completely different battle than their enemies, using tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. Rix, he called to his young technician. Are you recording this? Yes, Elder, but I do not understand what we are seeing. The humans are outnumbered, outgunned, and their technology appears inferior, yet they are winning. Elder Kess watched as another Kreks ship exploded under human fire. They are winning because they do not fight the battle their enemies expect. Watch how they move. They do not meet force with force. They strike where the enemy is weakest and vanish before retaliation. Can come? The battle raged for 3 hours. The humans lost 1 ship, the destroyer, U.S. Falcon, when its captain pushed too close to a Kreks battleship and couldn't escape the return fire. But in those same 3 hours, they destroyed or disabled 27 Kreks vessels. War-Leader Thok found himself facing something that had never happened in Kreks military history. His forces were retreating, not conducting a strategic withdrawal or regrouping for a better attack, but actually running away from an inferior enemy. How is this possible? He demanded of his bridge crew. They're primitives from a death world. Their ships are smaller, their weapons are crude, their numbers are laughable. Sub-Commander Vex looked up from his tactical station with fear in his eyes. War Leader, I believe that is exactly why they are winning. They fight like creatures. From a death world, they use their environment as a weapon, they strike from unexpected angles, and they seem to feel no fear of death. Thok studied the tactical display showing the chaotic battle. The human ships were everywhere at once, appearing and disappearing, like ghosts hitting his forces from directions that shouldn't have been possible. What kind of species developed such tactics? The kind that had to learn them to survive, Vex replied quietly. War Leader, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. These humans are not like our previous enemies. For the first time in his career, War Leader Thok considered the possibility that the mighty Kreks Empire might lose a battle to someone other than themselves. On the planet below, Elder Kess received a transmission from Admiral Chen. Elder, we're going to need to evacuate your people. This battle is far from over, and we can't guarantee your safety on the surface. Admiral, we are grateful beyond words, but our people are too frightened to leave the shelters. They do not understand who you are or why you came. Chen's image on the screen showed that strange expression again, the one that reminded Kess of predators and storms. Tell them that help has arrived from the death world called Earth. Tell them that humans have come, and humans do not abandon their friends. War Leader Thok paced the bridge of his command ship for the 15th time in an hour. 3 days had passed since the humans first appeared in the Zelrose system, and nothing was going according to plan. The Krex Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same proven strategy: overwhelming force, superior technology, and the fear their reputation brought to any enemy foolish enough to resist. None of these advantages seemed to matter against the humans. "Sub-Commander Vex, report on our losses," Thok commanded, though he dreaded hearing the answer. Vex consulted his datapad with trembling hands. "War Leader, we have lost 63 ships in 3 days. Our ground forces have been unable to establish permanent positions on the planet's surface. Every time we deploy troops, the humans somehow attack our supply lines or communication centers." Thok slammed his armored fist against the metal wall. "How is this possible? They have 12 ships. We have over 300 remaining vessels. They should be running out of ammunition, fuel, and personnel. War Leader, I believe they are using tactics that our military doctrine never prepared us for. Yesterday, a single human soldier infiltrated our main supply depot and destroyed 6 months' worth of ammunition using primitive explosive devices. That soldier was Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, and she was currently hiding in the wreckage of a Krex transport ship, watching enemy patrols search for her with growing amusement. The Krex moved in perfect formation, checking every obvious hiding spot with mechanical precision. They never thought to look inside their own destroyed equipment. Maria activated her communication device and whispered into it. "Command, this is Ghost 7, target destroyed. Enemy search patterns are predictable and inefficient. Requesting new assignment." Captain Tony Phillips's voice crackled back through the encrypted channel. "Outstanding work, Gonzalez. Port 2. Rally point Echo for resupply? We've got something special planned for tonight." Phillips had been leading special operations missions for 8 years, but he had never encountered an enemy like the Krex. They were incredibly strong, well-armed, and nearly impossible to kill in direct combat. But they had 2 critical weaknesses that made them vulnerable to human tactics. They were predictable, and they had never learned to fight an enemy that refused to meet them head-on. That night, Phillips led a team of 12 specialists in an attack that would be remembered in military history courses for centuries. They didn't target ships or weapons or even important facilities. Instead, they targeted something the Krex had never thought to protect: their psychology, using portable holographic projectors and sound systems. The humans created the illusion that their forces were everywhere at once. Krex soldiers would hear human voices in empty corridors, see human faces in darkened windows, and find messages written in their own language warning them that nowhere was safe. The messages were simple, but effective. "We are watching you. We know where you sleep. Your friends are already dead." None of it was true, but truth mattered less than perception. The Krex had built their entire military culture around being the hunters, the dominant predators who stalked weaker species across the galaxy. They had no experience being the prey. On the 4th day, something unprecedented happened in Krex military history. A patrol of 20 elite soldiers refused to leave their transport ship. Their squad leader, a veteran of 30 conquered worlds, reported to his superiors that the area was too dangerous to patrol on foot. War Leader Thok stared at the report in disbelief. "Too dangerous? They are elite soldiers wearing powered armor and carrying energy weapons capable of destroying buildings. What could possibly be too dangerous?" "The humans, War Leader," Sub-Commander Vex replied quietly. "The soldiers report that humans appear and disappear like ghosts. They strike without warning and vanish before we can respond. Our troops are beginning to believe that humans cannot be killed." This belief was reinforced when Captain Laura Johnson executed what would become known as the Impossible Maneuver. Johnson was a former test pilot who had volunteered for the most, a dangerous mission of the war, a direct assault on the Krex command ship. Flying a fighter equipped with experimental shields and engines, Johnson approached the massive enemy vessel. At maximum speed, The Krex defenders opened fire with everything they had. Filling the space around her ship with enough energy to destroy a small moon, Johnson flew through the barrage as if it weren't there. Her ship took hits that should have vaporized it, but the new shield technology absorbed the energy and actually used it to increase her speed. She accelerated past the point where normal pilots would have lost consciousness. It's past the point where most ships would have broken apart from the stress at the last possible moment. Johnson cut her engines and used the ship's momentum to ram directly through the command ship's main deflector array. Impact created a breach large enough for a boarding party, and Johnson led 20 Marines through the gap into the heart of the enemy vessel. War Leader. Wu Leader Thok watched in horror as primitive humans in basic armor stormed through his ship's corridors, moving with a speed and violence that his warriors couldn't match. These creatures fought like the universe itself was trying to kill them, and they were determined to take everyone else down with them. A human Marine appeared in the doorway of the bridge, weapon raised and ready to fire. The Marine was small, compared to the massive Krex warriors barely reaching their chest plates, but there was something in the creature's eyes that made Thok's blood freeze. It was the look of a predator that had evolved on a world where everything was dangerous, where only the strongest and smartest and most determined could survive. It was the look of a species that had spent millions of years learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. War Leader Thok, the Marine said through a translation device, "You have exactly 1 minute to order your forces to withdraw from this system, or we will continue this conversation in a more unpleasant manner." Thok looked around his bridge at his elite guard, the finest warriors the Krex Empire had ever produced. Every one of them was staring at the tiny human, with fear in their eyes. In 3,000 years of Krex history, no enemy had ever made it this far into their most secure vessel. "You were outnumbered 1,000 to 1 on this ship alone," Thok said, trying to keep his voice steady. "How do you expect to enforce this demand?" The human's expression didn't change. "War Leader, you're thinking about this wrong. We're not outnumbered. You just have more targets for us to choose from." As if to emphasize the point, explosions began echoing through the ship as other human teams completed their objectives. The lights flickered, artificial gravity fluctuated, and alarm signals began sounding from every section. Sub-Commander Vex leaned over to whisper in Thok's ear. "War Leader, they've taken control of our engineering section, our weapons control, and our navigation systems. If we do not comply, they could destroy the ship with all hands aboard." Thok stared at the human Marine for a long moment. In his entire military career, he had never encountered anything like this. His forces had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior firepower. But these humans fought with something the Krex had never possessed: the absolute refusal to accept defeat. They didn't fight for conquest or glory or resources. They fought because someone had asked for help, and they had decided that was enough reason to risk everything. "Very well," Thok said finally. "I will order the withdrawal." The human nodded once. "Smart choice. But you have 6 hours to clear the system. Any Krex vessel still in Zelro's space after that will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." As the Marines disappeared back through the breach they had created, Thok activated his fleet communication system. "All ships, this is War Leader Thok. We are withdrawing from the Zelro system immediately. Do not engage human forces during our departure." War Leader, his communications officer, asked in confusion, "What reason should I give for the withdrawal?" Looked at the hole in his bridge wall where the humans had entered, like in force of nature made of metal and fury. "Tell them we have encountered an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional means." For the first time in Krex history, their mighty fleet retreated not because they had been outfought, but because they had been out-hot. The humans had shown them that all their technological superiority meant nothing if they couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to fight by established rules. As the last Krex ship left the Zelro system, Elder Kess stood in the ruins of his once beautiful world and watched the human vessels begin landing on the planet's surface. These strange creatures from the Deathworld had kept their promise. They had come when called, fought when needed, and won when victory seemed impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after the Battle of Zelros, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the great halls of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime, representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered to discuss the emergence of a new power that no one had seen coming. Ambassador Keth of the Nexari Commonwealth stood before the assembly, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights as he spoke. Fellow delegates, we can no longer ignore the implications of recent events. A species from a classified death world has successfully defeated the Krex Empire in open combat. This changes everything we thought we knew about military power in our galaxy. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversations. For thousands of years, the established order had been simple. Advanced civilizations with superior technology dominated less developed species. The idea that primitives from a dangerous world could defeat a major empire was terrifying to those who had built their power on technological superiority. Representative Zara of the Talaxian Honor Guard rose from her seat. Ambassador Keth, with respect, calling the humans primitive may be inaccurate. Our intelligence suggests they possess military capabilities that we simply do not understand. What kind of capabilities? Asked Counselor Vrix of the Quantum Collective. Zara activated a holographic display showing battle footage that had been recovered from destroyed Krex ships. The assembled delegates watched in fascination and horror as human vessels moved through space in patterns that violated every known principle of fleet combat. Observe their tactical approach, Zara continued. They do not seek to match their enemy's strength. Instead, they identify weaknesses and exploit them with methods that our military academies have never considered. They fight as if the very concept of impossible does not exist in their language. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen stood in the rebuilt command center at New Geneva, reading reports that would have seemed like fantasy just 4 months earlier. The human fleet had returned home to a hero's welcome, but more importantly, they had returned with new knowledge about humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Captain Ben Rodriguez said as he entered her office, receiving communication requests from 17 different alien civilizations. They all want to establish formal diplomatic relations. Chen looked up from her datapad with a slight smile. I remember when we couldn't get one alien species to return our calls. What changed? Apparently, winning an impossible battle against overwhelming odds tends to get people's attention. The first formal diplomatic contact came from an unexpected source. Elder Kess himself arrived on Earth aboard a newly constructed Zalani vessel, accompanied by a delegation of his people who had insisted on meeting their saviors face to face. Meeting took place in the United Nations building in New York, with representatives from every major Earth government in attendance. Elder Kess, still showing the physical effects of his ordeal, spoke through a translation device that converted his musical language into standard English. People of Earth, he began, my species has no concept of warfare or violence. Before the Krex attacked, we believed that all intelligent life was fundamentally peaceful. We were wrong about the universe, but we were right about one thing. He paused, looking around the assembled human delegates with eyes that sparkled like cut gems. We were right to believe that some species choose to protect others rather than conquer them. Humans came to our aid when no one else would answer. Our call. You risked everything to save people you had never met, from a place you had never seen, simply because we asked for help. President Martinez stood to respond. Elder Kess, what we did was simply the right thing to do, as any decent species would have acted the same way. Elder Kess made a sound that the translator rendered as something between laughter and weeping. Mr. President, 43 civilizations received our distress call. Only one responded. Only humans came when we cried for help. Implications of those words rippled through the chamber and eventually through the galaxy itself. The most advanced civilizations in known space had ignored the desperate pleas of a dying people. While the supposedly primitive humans had risked everything to help Dr. Peter Hayes, Earth's chief xenobiologist had spent months studying the Galactic response to human intervention. His conclusions were disturbing and enlightening in equal measure. The problem, he explained to a gathering of Earth's military and political leaders, is that most galactic civilizations evolved on worlds that were relatively safe. They developed technology to overcome natural challenges, but they never developed the psychological traits necessary for true military thinking. Admiral Chen leaned forward in her chair. "I explained that in simpler terms, Doctor. Most alien species see warfare as a problem to be solved through superior resources and technology. They approach battles like engineering problems. Humans see warfare as a conflict between living, thinking beings who can adapt, improvise, and overcome. We approach battles like ... well, like battles." This difference in thinking became apparent when other civilizations began studying human military doctrine. The Talaxian Honor Guard, whose own military traditions emphasized personal combat and formal dueling, sent a delegation to observe human training exercises. General Thompson led the alien observers through a simulated urban combat scenario at Fort Bragg. The Talaxian observers watched in amazement as human soldiers adapted their tactics in real time, using buildings as cover, turning the environment into a weapon, and coordinating attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your warriors fight without honor," observed Commander Grix, the Talaxian military attaché. "Our soldiers fight to win," Thompson replied. "Honor is something we can worry about after we've kept our people alive." The comment was translated and transmitted back to the Talaxian homeworld, where it sparked months of debate about the nature of warfare and the purpose of military force. For the first time in their history, Talaxians began to question whether their emphasis on individual combat prowess was more important than tactical effectiveness. The Nexari Commonwealth, meanwhile, approached the human question from a purely analytical perspective. They dispatched their finest strategic computers to study human battle tactics, expecting to decode the algorithms that governed human military success. The computers failed completely. Human tactics couldn't be reduced to mathematical formulas because they were based on intuition, creativity, and the ability to make decisions in chaotic situations. The Nexari, who had built their entire civilization on logical analysis and predictable outcomes, found themselves confronting something their technology couldn't comprehend: the organized chaos of human warfare. 6 months after Zelrose, the first formal military exchange program began. The Talaxian Honor Guard sent 12 of their finest warriors to train with human marines, while Earth sent a team of military advisors to study Talaxian technology and philosophy. The results were dramatic. Talaxian warriors trained to fight individual opponents in formal combat, learned to work as teams and use their environment tactically. Human advisors, meanwhile, gained access to alien technology that enhanced their natural abilities rather than replacing them. But the most significant change occurred in how the galaxy responded to distress calls. Following what became known as the Zelrose Doctrine, established by Admiral Chen and ratified by the Galactic Council, any civilization capable of providing aid was morally obligated to respond to legitimate calls for help. The doctrine was initially controversial, particularly among species that preferred to avoid the costs and risks of helping others. But when the Krex Empire attempted to attack another peaceful world 6 months later, they found themselves facing not just human ships, but a coalition of forces from 17 different civilizations. The Krex retreated without firing a shot. Elder Kess established a permanent Zelani embassy on Earth. But more importantly, he became the galaxy's unofficial ambassador for peaceful species everywhere. His detailed records of human military capabilities, and more importantly, human moral principles, spread throughout civilized space. A year after the battle, Kess stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time he spoke as the representative of an alliance between the Zelani and the humans that had grown to include dozens of other species. "Honored delegates," he said, his musical voice carrying across the great chamber. "I speak today not as a victim seeking aid, but as the representative of beings who have learned something important about the universe."
Ow.
The chamber fell silent, waiting for his words. "We learned that the strongest military force in the galaxy is not the largest fleet or the most advanced weapons. The strongest force is the willingness to risk everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The humans showed us this truth, and now we share it with you." He gestured toward the human delegation, led by Admiral Chen, who had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. They came when we called for help. They answered when no one else would. They proved that being civilized doesn't mean being safe from danger. It means being dangerous to those who threaten the innocent. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership and recognition as a major galactic power.